Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. We're still waiting on a couple of people, so I will let them in, but we've got a lot of info to cover, so I want to get us started. We're going to be going till 1:30 today, but if you can't stay for the whole presentation, we will be recording this and putting this up on our YouTube channel, so I'll send out a link afterwards to that with some additional resources, and hopefully that will kind of answer any remaining questions you might have. Thanks for being here. It's a beautiful day, so it's kind of a shame to be inside, but hopefully you can get out and enjoy the sunshine afterwards. My name is Jacob Falkenberg. I am the Communications and Member Services Director at Venture Portland. For those of you that don't know, Venture Portland is a nonprofit that supports Portland's 50 business districts. So we offer training, technical assistance, and grants to business associations in the city of Portland. So this webinar is something we do on a monthly basis. We used to do them in person, now we're doing them via Zoom. So thanks for joining us this afternoon. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about activating your sidewalk in your street. So we got a special guest from PBOT here. But before we get started, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. So if you have a question, feel free to type it into the chat. We'll get to that at the end. We'll leave some time for questions. If you're not speaking, please remain muted just so there's no background noise that might interrupt the speakers. And yeah, like I said, feel free to, if you need to leave early, go ahead and do so, and I'll follow up with you after the presentation. So yeah, I just want to go ahead and get us started. I'm going to start by talking about activating your sidewalk and the front of your business. So I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen. Okay, can everybody see that? This is just a couple of slides here. Let me make that full screen. Okay. So just going to go over a couple of terms that we're going to be using today. The first of which is right-of-way. So the right-of-way is the publicly owned area between neighboring properties. So that's the street, sidewalk, it can be an alleyway, and anything that kind of falls into that category. An encroachment is a privately owned structure that is located in the right-of-way. So this is your typical cafe seating, planters, anything that you might have that's in those areas. And PBOT Healthy Business Permit, this is a program that was launched last year by PBOT that allows some temporary changes to the right-of-way to give people more space to spread out during the pandemic. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later and some of the changes that are happening there and ways that you can use that to kind of enhance your business. But first, let's talk about some of the ways that businesses have been using their right-of-way pre-pandemic. So let's talk about the different zones in the sidewalk. So the sidewalk is kind of broken down into 4 different zones. The first and closest zone to your business is called the frontage zone. And this can be anywhere from 6 inches to 2 feet 6 inches. In Portland, no sidewalks are the same. They kind of vary in width. So depending on the width of your sidewalk, the frontage zone and other zones could vary in size. The next zone, moving towards the street, is the through pedestrian zone. So this is the least flexible zone. This is the zone that must be kept clear for pedestrians to pass through, and that's going to range anywhere from 5 feet 6 inches to 8 feet. And then moving towards the street even more, we've got the furnishing zone. This is where you'll find a lot of street furniture, like bike racks and signage, street trees, that sort of thing. And finally, the curb zone right next to the street there. So the frontage zone is the area directly in front of your space, and this is between the through pedestrian zone and the property line. And this is basically here to allow pedestrians a comfortable distance from your building's door and other things that might be jutting out from your space. So, you know, you don't want to open your front door and hit somebody. This allows for people for safe passage in that area. There's the most freedom and flexibility for activation, but still some restrictions here. But it's also the start of the customer decompression zone. So that's the space directly within your business. Those two kind of overlap a bit. A little bit more on the decompression zone. This is your exterior entryway and interior entryway, and it's really just a place for your customers to adjust their environment. So in the wintertime, it's a space for them to kind of take off their coat, to, you know, put their keys in their bag, to take off their sunglasses, really get a lay of the land of what your store is all about and what products you're offering. So there are certain things you can do to accommodate, whether it's, you know, providing seating in this area, providing rugs to kind of keep the area from becoming slippery and wet, and signage to help draw people into that area. So there's some examples here. For examples that businesses that got a little more creative with the decompression zone, you'll see that the business on the left, they use tape to kind of draw people towards the entrance, and then similar decorations in the back of the business to kind of tie it all together. And then the example on the right here, this is a business, and you'll see there's a piece of public art, not public art, but a piece of art, a flying pig coming through the window there. Just a way to kind of get the attention of people walking by to get them looking at what your business has to offer there. So what's allowed in the frontage zone? This is a good example. This image shows the frontage zone here allows for this door to open without obstructing the path of the pedestrians. They also have a bench there to allow pedestrians and customers to sit down, relax, and also some seasonal decorations. So you'll see there's a wagon with some pumpkins on it to really make the space as inviting as possible. You could also have planters, signage. You can have a product rack or display with a permit. Lighting is also super important here. You know, lighting the front of your business as well as the windows you might have. We'll talk a little bit about that later. And then cafe seating can be in this area if you have ample space for it. It's an example from Multnomah Village. You might recognize it. This is a great use of the frontage zone. They've got some product on display. They've got a bench, but also this cool sculpture that has really become kind of a eye-catching piece for the area. What else is allowed in the frontage zone? Well, you also can put signage. So these require a permit. But these are A-frame signs, and these are a great way to get customers' attention. You want to update these regularly, but I'm sure you've seen people getting super creative with these. You want to make sure that these do not impede on the through pedestrian zone. So these photos aren't entirely accurate as to where you can place them. We just thought that they were kind of clever ways to get people's attention. And here's another creative way to kind of activate this zone, bubble machine. So this business had put a bubble machine behind this kind of wooden cutout. This is something that can be seen down the block, draw your customers down towards your space. Gets children's attention, it gets adult attention, always a good idea. You can also have cafe seating in this area, depending on the size of your frontage zone. You need to have at least an 8-foot sidewalk if you're going to have cafe seating. PBOT can help you determine whether or not this is possible for your space. You also need to make sure that there's a clear pedestrian zone of 5.5 to 8 feet if you do decide to put cafe seating. But cafe seating can jump from the frontage zone to the furnishing zone there towards the street. As long as there's a clear visual zone, so you need to be able to see down to the end of the block there, and a clear pedestrian zone that maintains that width, these can kind of vary from space to space along your block, depending on what's there. So you can see in this example on the left-hand side, there's some tree wells, there's a bike rack, some signage that would not allow the seating in the furnishing zone, so the frontage zone is where that they chose to have that. Here's an example from Williams District. You can see that their furnishing zone is just filled with bike racks and trees. There's no real room for cafe seating there. So they've got the seating on the left, but they've still maintained an open space here in the through pedestrian zone and a clear sight line down to the end of the block. The through pedestrian zone is least flexible. The Americans with Disabilities Act requires that you have 3 feet of space here, but city code requires up to 8 feet in places. So definitely check with PBOT to see how much space you actually need to leave for people with mobility issues, people pushing strollers, that sort of thing. You don't want to have any obstacles in this zone. One way you can activate this zone that the city kind of looks the other way on is through sidewalk talk. So this can't be overtly commercial. This can't call out the specific name of your business or that sort of thing, but it can be a way to draw people down the block into your space, get people's attention. These are photos from a sidewalk sale on Northeast Broadway that they used to do every summer. So the Business Association gave the businesses packages of chalk and encouraged them to kind of decorate their sidewalk. So the bookstore, you can see it says Eat, Sleep, Read, support local. Not necessarily shop at Broadway books, but still enough to kind of get people understanding what they're offering and how to get there. The one on the right is from a flower shop. It doesn't say flower shop, but it does say sale, and there's a drawing of a bouquet there. So just kind of an idea for that. You can also put promotional material adjacent to the through pedestrian zone. So an A-frame sign, for instance, can go in the furnishing zone, with a permit, of course. This example on the left is from an event that used to happen on North Williams called Walk Williams, and they've got an A-frame sign with the event information and then a little holder there at the top of the A-frame sign with a map of the district that kind of has a list of all the different businesses in the district. And on the right is, I believe, a yoga studio that has a table in their frontage zone with some promotional swag for passerby. Next, moving towards the street again, so on the other side of the through pedestrian zone is your furnishing zone. So this is where you're going to see your bike racks, your signs, your street signs, that sort of thing. But it also acts as a buffer between pedestrians and the roadway. So the city is actually kind of flexible with how you can use this space. This example here on the right is from downtown Portland. You'll see that they've got these beautiful planters in the furnishing zone, and that not only enlivens the area, but it also buffers pedestrians from traffic, including the MAX trains barreling down the street. So, furnishing zone, what can you put in it? Well, with a permit, you can do a bench, a bike rack, cafe seating, garbage cans, public art, A-frames. And you don't even need a permit for planter boxes. So if you wanted to do some landscaping within those guidelines based on your zone width, you could do so. Here's an example for Mississippi Avenue where they've got not a whole lot of space in their frontage zone, but enough space in their furnishing zone for some small cafe seating while still allowing for passage for the pedestrians. You can also put bike racks. This requires a permit for PBOT, and you need to have at least a 9-foot sidewalk. But if you do, you can get really creative. So here's some examples from businesses that have hired artists to create bike racks for their relate to their businesses. As long as the bike rack is 30 inches tall and 18 inches wide, you can create some really cool stuff. So this on the right here is a toothbrush and floss. That was in front of a dental office. On the Below that, you've got a pair of eyeglasses out in front of an optometrist. And then on the left, some houses out front of a real estate office. Garbage cans, also super important, as the city does not put garbage cans in every business district. This could be an option to kind of help keep your district clean. It is expensive. You have to remember that the owner is responsible for hauling and maintenance. So making sure to budget for that before you actually purchase the can. But if you get a permit from BPS, you can put the trash cans into the furnishing zone, and districts have gotten really creative with this. The example on the left from Woodstock, they hired an artist to paint their cans. In the center, that's Alberta. They had an artist create cans out of old signs. And then on the right there, St. John's had some cans fabricated using some visual cues from the St. John's Bridge. You can also have public art in the furnishing zone. So this can help to reinforce your district's identity as an art destination. It can really encourage people to visit, see the art. Anything Instagrammable is great free marketing for your district. It does require a permit, something you'll want to work with both PBOT and the Regional Arts and Cultural Council on. But some districts have gotten some really cool stuff. This example is from Division Clinton. They hired an artist to create sculptures of people that had been seen on the street. And these are actually placed strategically through the 30 or 40 block business district to kind of help pull people through the district to see the art, but also support the businesses while they're there. Lighting is also super important. People don't want to shop or dine where they can't see. People don't feel safe in areas that aren't well lit. So this is why it's super important for you to think about how the front of your store is lit, and work with your neighbors to encourage them to light their storefronts, because gaps in lighting impede walking. So this shot here shows that you don't really feel safe walking into an area that's not well lit at night. This is an example of a better lit business district. No gaps in the lighting. You can see all the way down the street. It's much more inviting. They've also lit some of the second stories to really reinforce an area as a destination. So this is much more comfortable, especially in the darker months for pedestrians, and safer too. So the example on the left, that's an example of something that is not lit adequately. That could encourage bad behavior. On the right, much more, much brighter, much safer, less encouraging to the criminal element. And finally, signage is super important to light. So the example on the left, they've lit their sign adequately. You know it's exactly what that is at nighttime, especially if you're driving by at high speed. On the right, can't really tell, so not going to be effective. Even if you're not open at night, you're not encouraging people to come back the next day. So those used to be your only options when you were thinking about activating the front space of your store. But in recent years, PBOT has introduced a couple of programs to help you make more of the space you have. The most recent being the Healthy Business Permit Program. So this was launched last year as a response to the pandemic to help businesses take business out into the right of way, help their customers spread out safely, but also encourage businesses to stay open during the pandemic. So our special guest today is Bridget Coleman from PBOT. She's the program coordinator for Portland in the Streets program, and she's going to talk a little bit about the Healthy Business Permit program and what you can expect as we go into the spring and summer months. Hey, Bridget.
Hey, thanks, Jacob. I'm going to just get into screen sharing mode here and set up my presentation. Okay, can everybody see this? Hopefully.
Yeah, looks good.
Perfect. So yeah, PBOT, in response to the COVID pandemic emergency, launched a number of programs looking at right-of-way spaces. Right-of-way street space takes up 20% of the landscape of the city, so we saw that as a really valuable asset to help communities keep mobile and active, as well as helping businesses utilize some of that space to expand their operations into outdoor spaces, which were a little bit safer for interactions and physical distancing. So you can see here on the cover slide, this is Southeast Ankeny. It has some outdoor seating on both sides of the street. You see the cones and barricades at the end. This is a full road closure. And then they did a beautiful rainbow street painting through the center to delineate some bike and ped access space through there. So it's a beautiful example of kind of some of the fun, colorful things that people have come up with for the program. So I'm going to talk a little bit about 2020 first. PBOT issued 1,184 healthy business permits in 2020 in 2 cycles. We had a summer permit program and then we had a winter permit program. I will note that our winter healthy business permits are going to expire here at the end of March 31st. And we do have our new healthy business permits open for applications right now. And I'll put a link into the website for you guys in the chat. But we are accepting permits and that cycle is open. It will expire October 31st of 2021. So in addition to healthy business permits in 2020, we also issued 181 pickup drop-off zones, and both of these programs were free of charge for businesses. On top of that, we provided $40,000+ in free traffic control devices for Black, Indigenous, and person of color owned businesses. We were able to deliver, as part of our CARES Act funding from the federal government, 20 free outdoor dining plaza kits, and those went to BIPOC businesses as well. We distributed $10,000 worth of free 5-minute pickup drop-off signs. And then we were able to give out $1,100 in free and discounted paint and supplies for painting projects on the right-of-way for healthy business installations. I will note that we feel very fortunate to be offering the permit program again for free for businesses in 2021. We absorbed about $1.4 million in staff time to dedicate to these permits, including intake review, traffic control plan development, coordination, insurance, and getting permits issued out to folks. And then, you know, looking at our past programs that were similar to this, the fees for those had ranged from like $900 to $17,000 for businesses, depending on where they were located and if it was a metered zone. We've been getting a lot of questions about what does the future of this program look like past COVID. And we are looking at the possibility of the program becoming permanent. We're going to continue to monitor the public health and economic indicators, of course, and then looking at other Bureau priorities and trying to determine what we're going to be able to offer in the future. We'll be looking at lessons learned. We'll be looking at you know, compliance issues that come up with the programs, and then assessing fees, some kind of fee structure for a future program, as well as looking at what the cycle for the permits may look like. So there has been huge support from this from the public. We did a survey with, I think, about 3,000 respondents, community respondents, and 94% of them said they wanted to see the program continue past COVID. So it's definitely something that's on our radar and that we are looking at. So these are our 5-minute pickup drop-off zones. These are the signs that we had deployed as part of our CARES Act funding. When you apply for the space, it is free, and the program has been extended through December 31st of this year. The spaces aren't reserved for a single business, but they're meant to serve businesses nearby. So if you apply for it, we'll send you a printable sign. We're looking at potentially getting a few more of these signs to deploy as well. And then it makes for a really great pickup drop-off option for businesses that are looking at to-go models or serving a bunch of, you know, Grubhub type of pickup model, or you want customers in and out really quickly. And it really helps support the block in getting that traffic turnover happening quickly. All right, so healthy businesses for 2021. There's definitely some important things that Jacob, thank you, touched on in your presentation as well. One of which is the 6-foot minimum width for a clear pedestrian pathway. That's our requirement for the Healthy Business Permit Program. We have a couple other really important things to look at. We have a 10-foot height for electrical overhead clearance. We talked about lighting. One of the things that we have as an option is hanging string lights or doing some kind of lighting in your healthy business installation. This is showing a parking plaza with the seating adjacent to the curb. You see the lighting's coming overhead by cord and then strung around the tents. You can also run the cord along the sidewalk, but we want to see cord covers for safety and ADA accessibility. A couple other really important things to note about compliance for the space. You'll notice there's reflectivity on the sides of the structure there, the orange and white striping. We do require either reflective tape or cones with reflectivity to be placed at the corners, and then a 1-foot setback from the traffic lane. So you want to make sure you have that buffer space between where your seating area starts and the travel lane. And then the tents at that 7.5 foot height is important. Tents may or may not be allowed. So if you are planning to have a tent, you can let us know in your application. Our permitting team will take a look at where you want to locate it and let you know if it's possible. There are some conflicts with like line of sight for stop signs or pedestrian crossings. And that's what we're looking at to make sure we're creating a safe environment for everyone. One other thing to note with the tent legs, you want to make sure that your tent legs are not impeding that 6-foot minimum width that we have for the pedestrian zone. So keep that in mind when you're working on setup. I think that going forward, as PBOT's looking at the program and looking at the potential for it to being permanent, compliance is one thing that's going to impact how many permits we're able to issue, how complex the application and permit review process is. And so we're really hoping that this summer we continue to have folks in compliance and a great program that's creating safe spaces for pedestrians and customers. So new for summer 2021, we have actually simplified our application from our previous versions of it. So it now only takes about 5 minutes to apply. One important new thing to note is that you will be asked to attach a photo of your current installation or the space that you're requesting to use when you apply. And this doesn't have to be done at the time of the application, but we will need it before we issue a permit. And it does speed up the process if it comes in early. So if you're able to take the picture before you apply and provide it with the application, it helps limit the back and forth that we do with you and make sure we can get through the processing as quickly as possible. And then one other kind of big thing we're expecting for this summer is construction. Summer is a very busy time for construction. And our permits do require that we remove any items. We may have to deactivate spaces or even move tents or structures that are there out of the space to accommodate utility work or emergency work, emergency construction on site. Once the work is completed, you will be able to move back in. Some of the construction work, we're looking for conflicts when you apply. So we may know in advance, like you have a construction project that's slated on in your space for August, and we can tell you that ahead of time. Other times it is kind of an emergency quick response for the work, and you would get notified and asked to remove the spaces and then move back in once it was completed. So just a couple important things to keep in mind. All right. So also in 2021, we're happy to be providing resources again for Black, Indigenous, and person of color owned businesses. As I mentioned, we provided over $40,000 in free traffic control devices last year for summer and winter permits, and we're going to continue to offer free traffic control devices for BIPOC businesses. We have free retro-reflective tape for businesses, and there's a link on the website to request tape. So that's available for everyone. And then we also are providing 3 free gallons of paint for street paintings at Healthy Business Installations for BIPOC-owned businesses. So if you have a space that you want to do a surface treatment with that paint, you can utilize that. We'll go through the design review process with you. And then you would be able to have that kind of added artistic flair in your space. So I'm going to talk about a few examples of what maybe you've seen out there or you might be thinking about. In the upper left here, you can see they've built a perimeter and a raised platform for their space. It's a great looking space. It has ADA access. It's curb flush, so there's no challenges for people with mobility devices to get on and off. One of the things to note is that they don't have a cone at the end or the reflective taping. So that's something that we would ask that they include in their installation, but they've created a nice seating space there. On the right, you have some planters, which are also allowed, and you can see that they've used their reflective cone to delineate the corner and then use the planters to create kind of a secluded space for their diners. And then in the bottom, there's an option here with wave delineators, or what those white things are called, kind of framing out that parking plaza space with the cones at the end as well. And these parking plazas are the easiest and most popular of the permits to get through Healthy Businesses, or the space to access. Parking is generally adjacent to the business. If you wanted to, say, use your business's space and you have a neighbor that's like, yes, I'd love to have you extend in front of my space, we can work with you. We just ask that they give their consent, and then we can create a space for you to use, or a used space. Here you'll see there's an option in the upper right where they have some cafe seating along the right. They have that clear pedestrian through zone, and then they have their fenced in seating area and the parking space with the cones as well. In the bottom, they've done AstroTurf, which I think is kind of a cool way to add some flair to your space, as well as the umbrellas. And then they have the barrels with that reflective striping as well. This is a side street plaza. So we have a few of these around town. This one maintained the bike corral in the space and then added some seating around it. PBOT is not currently moving bike parking for Healthy Business Plaza, so we're trying to work around existing infrastructure so we don't have to make infrastructure changes, but here's one where they've incorporated it. I will note, for the side street plazas, we require an 11-foot emergency lane be maintained and free of obstruction at all time. And this one, their emergency lane is on the far side, closest to the red building. They've got that 11 feet of space where the emergency vehicles can maintain access through there. So it's definitely an important thing to consider if you're looking at the side street plaza. This is a partial side street plaza. So you can see they've closed one lane of traffic as well as their parking. And they have done something unique here where they have a neighbor across the street with driveway access needs. So they've mitigated that by creating kind of an L shape in their space and using a little bit of the lane, a little bit of the parking, and creating some unique fencing around there to really maximize the amount of space that they could use. So that's a good example of that. This is Southeast Clinton, and they have done a full street closure as well on a side street. They maintained their biking and pet access through the center of the space, which is pretty unique. And they've delineated that with the wave delineators and the potted trees to create that separation between the diners and the bicyclists that are going through there. It's on a neighborhood greenway, so lots of cyclists are going through pretty frequently. And then they have the seating on both sides of that as well. So if you want to engage with the program, we would love to hear from you, for you to connect and apply. Our information about the program and program requirements is available through safestreetspdx.com. There's a Healthy Business, what is Healthy Businesses page, as well as an apply for a Healthy Business permit page. And that includes all of the information that I've talked about, as well as very detailed program requirements. You can also contact us if you have questions at PBOT Business Toolkit at portlandoregon.gov. And then if you have a space that you're using, you want to share it, you can mention PBOT info. And we will take a look at those, and we'd love to see what you're doing and what you're using, and the people out there enjoying it. But yeah, I appreciate being here, being able to share some of the program information, and I'm happy to answer any questions when we're ready for that.
Thanks, Bridget. Yeah, that's really great to see how creative businesses are getting with this program, and thanks to PBOT for making it happen and helping them activate these spaces. I think a lot of them probably wouldn't have made it through the winter if it wasn't for this program. So thanks for the work you're doing there. If people have questions for Bridget, please just drop them in the chat, and we'll get to them in just a minute. Looks like a couple have already come in. But first, I'd just like to share a couple more examples from what other businesses are doing. So I'll go ahead and just share my screen again. And let's see here. Okay. Okay, great. So if you haven't checked this out, Travel Portland has created a Portland patio guide. So this is a great space to promote your outdoor space if you have one. So if you haven't sent Travel Portland your information for this, I encourage you to do so. They've got over 200 patios listed with all your business information and a photo of the patio itself. It's a great way to promote your business, but at the same time, also get some ideas from what other businesses are doing. So the first one I just wanted to kind of draw everybody's attention to is this patio from Arden. So yeah, they've got the heaters, which is great, covered space, really comfortable in the wintertime, but also a couple of other elements I wanted to bring your attention to. So they've got this fencing along here to kind of shield them from the street here. And they've also hung little planter boxes on the fences with plants in them. So greenery really helps to spruce up these spaces, make them inviting, and keep people in the spaces for longer periods of time. So they've also hung some planters from the tent pole here to really get some greenery going there. Next one up is from Barrio. So this is just a good example of lighting, especially in the wintertime. Places can look kind of dark and not places you want to spend time. So they did a great job of hanging these holiday lights along the top and down the side to kind of create some good atmosphere and brighten up the space a little bit. Another good one right here is Beulah Land. They've incorporated their street tree into their patio. So they built a little seating around that. This is going to be great in the summertime to provide shade for the people that are using the patio there. They've also got their A-frame sign letting people know that they are open. Great space, great use of the small space that they have there. Up next, you can see just the amount of content here. It's not even loading quick enough. So much space. Dar es Salaam on Alberta, they created these really cool A-frames in their front space. So this is actually, I think, technically in their frontage zone. They're fortunate enough to have a space that's set back from the sidewalk. So these A-frames are really great, especially in the wintertime, keeping the elements out, but also keeping diners safe in their own secluded spaces. They also hung the lights around them to really draw people in. So great use of space there. A lot of businesses have done this next one, but if you haven't seen this, it's worth mentioning. These little tabletop propane heaters are a great way to add some atmosphere. This is at Eam on North Williams. Great way for diners to get some heat, but also to brighten up the space during the nighttime. Up next is a space called Gato Gato. They've got a great little covered space in their front parking lot. A lot of greenery here, high ceilings, heated, but the thing I wanted to draw your attention to is their table coverings. They've got these bright tablecloths that really help to enliven the space. Adding some color as well are these rugs that they've put under the table. So really making it feel cozy and homey. And kind of fitting with the brand of their business. Couple more. Scrolling down here, Gorgeous Beer Company. You may have recognized this particular installation, dubbed Rainbow Road on Southeast Ankeny and 28th. This is a great use of the street painting that Bridget had mentioned. This is something that draws, this is a bikeway. So it's a great way to draw cyclists into the space and just brighten up the space with some color. And once my computer catches up, we'll take a look at another example from a business downtown called Lok Lok. And they are a Vietnamese restaurant, and they've used these Vietnamese inspired panels to kind of frame in their patio space, along with these tubs of bamboo, which help to kind of act as dividers between the tables, but also add some greenery to the space. So really great way to stay on brand, but make your space unique as well. And then finally, the last one I wanted to mention, once this loads, is Parkside in Kenton. These are kind of a different take on the A-frame with the open side here, but a great way to kind of create individualized seating with protection from the elements. Those are really neat. So I encourage you to check out this website that Travel Portland has created. Get your business up there. A lot of people are wanting to support businesses during the pandemic, but they want to know what they're getting themselves into before they venture out, especially during inclement weather. So make sure that it's as clear as possible the safety precautions that your business is taking during this time. Okay. So that does it for our presentation. So I'd like to move us along to the Q&A section of our training. So if you could just go ahead and continue to drop your questions in the chat, and we'll address them as they come in. So the first question here is from Annette. It says, does parking enforcement help with those who don't use the drop-off zones properly? Bridget, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, so I will say that things kind of rolled out really quickly in response to the emergency. And so some of the enforcement and compliance pieces were, being built as we were moving through things. But we are looking at kind of evaluating both the healthy business spaces and parking spaces to make sure that the use is actually correct. We do have a feedback form on our website for healthy business related feedback. And it's great to hear from the community about either things that are working really well that they'd love to see, or any potential issues like, a healthy business permit was issued, but they're using it for their employees to park their cars there during working hours, right? That's not the intent of the permit. So we definitely want to get feedback about that and make sure that we're addressing those as they come in.
Great, thanks. So is there a particular email that folks should reach out to?
Yeah, we actually have an online form on the website. So I dropped a link to our press release into the chat, and that includes links to the website as well as the application form and the permit conditions and requirements. So it's a great resource to connect with all of the permit info, and the feedback form is on the What is Healthy Businesses website. So you can connect there and provide feedback. I'll see if I can pull the direct link and share it in the chat as well.
Cool. Yeah, and I'll include that in our follow-up email as well.
That'd be great.
Okay, next question comes from Paul. This is in regards to one of the examples that you showed, Bridget. He asks, was the single lane side street plaza one way, or was it changed to one way at the intersection? So is there any flexibility in one way versus two-way streets, and how's that work?
Yeah, so every street is so unique and different. And one of the things that PBOT has been offering, which is part of our internal process and cost, is traffic engineering review. So when we have a request for a side street or something that's a parking plaza over 25 miles per hour, our traffic engineering team actually takes a look at it and says, okay, what can we do here as far as the space that's available? Can we close the whole side street? Can it be a singular lane? And then they will create a unique traffic control plan for the applicant. And we are providing those free of cost. So that's another benefit that we're offering. And then the traffic control required for that, if you're a Black, Indigenous, person of color owned businesses, you can get it for free through PBOT. Other businesses would need to acquire the traffic control or rent it through rental companies, and then use that as well. In that particular instance, it was two-way traffic with parking on one side, and we reduced it to a single lane, and the actual access lane is where the parking used to be. So we converted the parking spaces to no parking and allowed vehicle traffic through there, and then it had some signage at both ends of the block warning drivers of the road changes as part of that traffic control plan as well.
Very cool. Yes, actually, I think forcing a lot of people to rethink how these streets are being used and what's the best purpose for them. So great to hear that there's flexibility there, and PBOT's willing to help think what's going to be the best use for everybody. Okay, next question from Chase. When a healthy business permit is requested, do the neighboring businesses get notified? So is this something you should be collaborating with your neighbors with, or is this just an automatic process of where if somebody applies, you'll let everybody else know?
Mm-hmm. So for our emergency response for COVID, we have launched this program separate from what we normally would have done under our Portland in the Streets programming for something like sidewalk cafes or street seats. And part of that was reducing barriers for businesses so that we could get these on the ground quickly, so we could support the economic vitality of the city and of these business districts. And so we do have notification requirements for lane and street closures, and we have notification requirements if you're going to impede on a neighboring property. But if you're using a parking plaza that is only adjacent to your business, you don't have to notify your neighbors. We, of course, encourage people to work with their neighbors and notify their neighbors. We have found that sites where multiple businesses have come together to create a space, like Southeast Clinton, they're very vibrant, the community really likes it, and it's creating a welcoming space for everyone. And it also gives businesses an opportunity to kind of address the mixed use needs that they have. Some businesses may be focused still on a to-go model only, while others are like, I really need outdoor dining space to make my business model function, right? So there's finding that balance. Working with your neighbors is always encouraged. And as we look at the permanence of this program, I would imagine that notification requirements and things like that will be assessed as well. And we will take a look at that when we look at the future of healthy business permits.
Great. Yeah, I definitely think that these projects are more successful if you work with your neighbor and your business association. So working with the business association is a great way to kind of get all the businesses in the district on the same page, figure out, who would be interested in collaborating and what concerns other businesses might have with your potential project. So if you need the contact information for your association, just let us know and we can help connect you with them. All right. Next up, Paul asks, this is kind of in the similar vein, is PBOT encouraging multiple businesses in a district to draw one permit for a larger plaza instead of multiple small plazas? Is there a preference by PBOT? Should businesses be focusing on a larger plaza, or does it not matter? Can they just do their single plaza?
I think it's really up to the businesses within the district. So if you're looking at like, how do we draw community? How do we create a destination within our district and enough space to physically distance folks? If you have a high density of businesses that want to use the space, then you can look at that larger model or, side street closure. I think from a logistics perspective in permitting, often what we see is that folks start with the parking plazas because it's an easy, low barrier to entry, less planning, less notification. So even if you have like a handful of businesses on the same block that are like, maybe we're interested in doing a side street closure, but let's start with parking. And then we can work out the details of like, do we actually need the additional space? Is it actually going to benefit us, or is parking enough? And then weighing that opportunity cost of doing the additional notification as well. So there's a lot that start with the parking plazas and kind of ramp up as that need develops, or as you see, like, we have huge success with this, we need more seating space for our customers.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It seems like it's a case-by-case basis. Some streets are better equipped for these larger plazas than others. So taking that into consideration, accessibility, safety, but also making sure there's no negative impacts to other businesses. So a lot of things to consider.
Yeah, one other thing I'll mention in regard to the side street plazas or multiple business plazas, if you are serving alcohol as part of your business, we do make sure that when we're doing site plans for those and reviewing that, for OLCC, each business has a designated serving area as part of that. So that's one thing to consider. If you're working with multiple restaurants that are serving alcohol, you would have kind of separate seating areas within this larger communal space or attractive space for customers.
Good to know. Yeah, I know there's some specific regulations around serving alcohol, so definitely coordinate with OLCC on that one too if you're a business that's planning on doing something like that and you hadn't already. Wanted to just mention real quick, David Fredrickson says Figure Plant makes those kusas at Parkside. So the last example I showed with the kind of curved tent structure that goes over the picnic tables. So if you're interested in something like that for your business, go ahead and reach out to David at Figure Plant, their local business right in Kenton in North Portland. Okay, next question. Tori says, we'd like to use the parking spaces in front of our businesses on the weekends, pop-up vendors. So I'm guessing retail vendors. So the structures used would only be out there for a couple of days a week, leaving parking spaces open the rest of the week. Does this permitting fall under the Healthy Business Program? And are there tips or requirements for blocking off parking spaces that we need in advance? So, yeah, I guess the question is, with Healthy Business Permit, is this a 7-day-a-week thing, or can you kind of pick and choose when you're using the space?
Yeah, so we previously have not had hours of operation requirements for the permits, and that has continued into summer. We are avoiding events. So our community event program is on hold currently, and we're not sure when that will come back online. So things like big street fairs and that kind of thing are not currently allowed. But when you're talking about normal business operation needs, we have a number of businesses who carry multiple retail providers within their shop, or they work, a business organization that's working with a bunch of micro enterprises, and we have issued permits for them to have healthy business space to do these pop-up outdoor retail markets. So that is something that's available within the Healthy Business Permit Program. And I think that we are starting to see more and more requests for those weekend only or Saturday only, whatever that looks like, kind of event. So yes, absolutely put in an application form and we will work through that process and let you know what's required for that.
That's great to hear. Yeah, glad to hear that these spaces can be used by retailers and even service-based businesses. I know I've seen a couple of massage therapy businesses operating in these spaces. So it sounds like there's some flexibility as long as they work with you, and maybe there's additional requirements based on the type of business, but it sounds like it's not just for restaurants and bars. That's great to hear.
There's fitness studios are using it. We've had barbers apply. So it's really anything, nonprofits have been like, we want to set up seating so we can engage with our normal customers and provide services outside. So yeah, I think whatever your business need is, we have schools that have used it to create outdoor learning areas or better morning pickup drop-off zones for coordinating that kind of distanced drop-off. So there's a lot of options and a lot of business uses that we see coming into the Healthy Business Program.
Great to hear it. So if you have an idea that hasn't been done yet, it never hurts to reach out to PBOT to see if it can become a reality. We've been seeing a lot of creativity here, but I think with the moving into the summer months, I think there's even more opportunity for activation. Tina asks, is any of the permitting going to become permanent? So this might be hard to determine right now, but has there been any consideration into making any of these spaces permanent?
Yeah, so there's, I guess, two veins of that. One is the permit program. We are looking at creating something post-COVID-19 emergency response and looking at reviewing the program, evaluating what has happened over the last 2 years once we're moving into the new cycle, and looking at what that permit program would look like, what kind of a fee structure would make sense for it, and then what kind of a permit cycle would make sense. Is it an annual permit? Is there a summer winter component? So these are some of the things we'll be looking at. We'll also be this spring, summer, sending out a survey for all of our healthy business applicants to get some more feedback on that. So if you're involved in the program, if you're thinking about getting a permit, be on the lookout for that and definitely give feedback, because it's going to help just, drive the decisions that PBOT's making as well. And that'll be really valuable in looking at that permanence. There are a number of sites that have been very successful, and a number of people who are reaching out asking, can I have my space be permanent? And of course, we run into, the construction conflicts, like I mentioned before, and that would be something that would just continue to be a part of that. There's a few people that I know of who are asking for permanent spaces, and we're going to be evaluating those and looking at the possibility to have some of these continue. And then, what does that look like? PBOT has some pedestrian focused spaces downtown this summer that are going to be rolling out. And so we're looking at what does that pedestrian space look like? What is going to be a PBOT prioritized street space, ped space, and what of these healthy businesses may continue to have longevity and staying power in the spaces that they're occupying.
That's great to hear. Yeah, I think sometimes it takes a crisis for you to realize that things could change for the better. So yeah, look forward to hearing more on that as it develops. Next question is, if someone runs a business from their home, can they apply for a healthy business permit? So is this only in commercial areas, or could this be in a residential area, or if you have a home-based business in a commercial area? Have you heard from any businesses like that?
I'm going to say that that's one that hasn't come up yet, but I kind of like the idea of it. Like if you were a barber operating out of your house, or a stylist, and you wanted to have somebody come and get a haircut, in a parking space adjacent to your property, that's definitely something we would consider. As I mentioned, we want to make sure that the spaces are being used as an extension of business space for folks. So we would definitely apply or reach out to us at the email, and let's have a conversation about it and what the need is, and make sure that it fits within the program parameters. But if it does, we can definitely move forward with it.
Very cool. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I think there's a lot of home-based businesses that we don't even know about that could benefit from having some outdoor space for meeting with clients in whatever capacity. So,
Mhm.
yeah, definitely, Paul, feel free to reach out to see if that might work for you or somebody you know. Um, okay, next question is from Elise. Who are we talking about creating a festival street? Neighbors would be concerned if there were a full-time garage sale or something similar. So it sounds like,
Actually, I got to clarify that was meant for the running the business from your home. The second part of that.
oh, okay, that
Okay.
makes sense. Makes sense.
Okay.
So just that first part of the question, best contact for Festival Street. That sounds like it's that would be you, right, Bridget?
Not for festivals. Like if we're talking about permanent festival streets, like creating a space like in Old Town, that's not me. But I will find out who you can talk to about it, Elise, and get that contact info to you. I can't recall off the top of my head who's in charge of those types of requests at the moment, but I will find out for you.
We had talked about maybe having Alberta, part of it being marked off as a pedestrian street a couple of times a month, for example.
So that may fit within the healthy business program if we're talking about like doing, weekends or whatever your monthly normal recurring cycle is. But a festival street designation is something different through the city where you're actually creating a permanent festival street space that has amenities for hosting outdoor community focused events. So those are kind of two different veins. If you're thinking you want to test it out and try something through the Healthy Business Program where you're getting businesses out there to activate the space through, micro enterprise pop-up markets or outdoor dining occasionally, whatever the business need for the district is, that would probably fall within the healthy businesses. But if you're looking at that more permanent, long-term, official designation, then we would be looking at something a little bit different.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about is the long-term.
Okay, yeah. I'll find out who you can connect with for that one.
Thank you.
Thanks for clarifying on that one. Yeah, I think we don't see too many of these around the city, but I know there's one in Old Town and maybe a handful of other districts. So it would be great to see more of these, permanent pedestrian-only areas in business districts as we've seen in Europe and other places where they've been successful. Cool.
I think on that same vein, I mentioned earlier that all of our normal programs are on hold, and the only thing that we currently have active is our emergency response healthy business program. We are getting a lot of interest from folks about our other programs right now, and the city and PBOT are evaluating when to bring things back online. One of the things that I think is interesting for business districts is also the pedestrian plaza spaces. So some of you have existing plaza spaces, and the city, like normally we would have a program that we can work with you to create these kind of community use plaza areas as well. So in the future, that may be something that would be a good option for some of the districts that have those existing spaces.
Yeah, I know St. John's has a plaza space that they use year round for various things. So they've done a great job activating that in various capacities over the last year. And yeah, would love to see other districts do the same. So I had a question. Businesses spend a lot of money on these spaces. So what are some common things that you see from businesses that they want to try to do that actually aren't allowed under the particular permit program? So just some misconceptions businesses might have before they spend the money to do it that PBOT doesn't allow.
Yeah, I think there's a variety of things that pop up, and sometimes it's not PBOT not allowing it, but you want to make sure that you're also compliant with the state and local requirements. So Multnomah County has some requirements about enclosing spaces and how many sides you can have to your tent and that kind of thing. we, I guess, have kind of a gray area with tents and like or similar structure, or I don't want to call it structures, but you know, there's some folks who are putting in like built structures, and that's kind of a gray area for us right now. And the big challenge, especially with that, is if you have to move something for access needs or construction, then all of that has to be, you know, unbolted and pulled out, and that can be a real challenge. These permits are temporary, right? And they're revocable. And because we don't have that permanence, it is, I don't know, maybe not a huge risk, but a risk to build something or install something that's incredibly expensive, especially if you don't know what the long-term vision of it is. It's just a decision that businesses are making. I think on the other side of that, like, we have a lot of small businesses who've been able to utilize right-of-way space. Maybe they only had a counter seating situation inside of their building, even pre-COVID. And now they're able to have, you know, multiple parking spaces outside. They have the parking plaza and sidewalk cafe dining. So they're effectively, you know, doubling, tripling their seating space for their customers. So for some of them, it's a really big opportunity for them to create a space, and the investment is worth it because of the revenue and the additional seating that they're able to provide. So I think it's just very unique for each of the businesses as far as what they want to invest in, what they want to put out there, and then the value that they get from it. But I think for us, the biggest concerns for compliance for us are maintaining that 6-foot pedestrian through zone, making sure that the sightlines are clear for stop signs and traffic signals and pedestrians crossing the street. So we have the tent requirements, spacing for tents, and we want to check in with you on that when you're applying for your permit, and make sure that those safety needs are met. And then making sure that we have the reflectivity. I think one of the biggest complaints or the two biggest complaints we get from community is A-frames or items blocking the pedestrian through zone. So that's a big thing that the people in your communities don't want to experience. There is still public space there, so they want to make sure they can access it. And then not having the safety reflectivity or the cones around the parking plazas. And so those are things that you definitely want to be mindful of when you're looking at creating a space.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. You know, it may be tempting to create this grand, elaborate structure, but that's a good point. These are temporary permits, and yeah, you never know when construction may need to happen, and you might have to dismantle it. So best to err on the side of caution. But if you did have an idea, it's also a good idea to talk with you all about that, I would assume.
Yeah, we love the conversations. We would much rather talk with folks about what they want to do ahead of time before they invest, so we don't have to come out later and say, you can't have this, or, you know, you need to move things, or this isn't going to work. So as much as you can tell us up front that of what you're planning on doing, we can make sure that you're in compliance, that you're creating a space that's going to be valuable for you and wonderful for your customers' experience.
Makes sense. Okay. Evan asks, does PBOT require to be listed as additional insured on the liability insurance certificate of the business for the permit? So yeah, insurance, how does that work?
Yeah, so insurance has always been a requirement for our street seats and cafe, sidewalk cafe programs, and that has continued through healthy businesses. So we do require that PBOT be listed as additionally insured, and then your agent will send us a liability certificate and endorsement. And we have some instructions about insurance documentation that needs to be provided on the website as well. But that is an additional cost for businesses to consider when they're looking at the spaces.
Makes sense. Thanks for clarifying that. And Elise asks, are permits needed for benches on the sidewalk and or a barbecue smoker or something else related to the business?
So anything fire related definitely is a required permit from the fire marshal's office. And we have a link to them through our website as well. And then for us, if we're looking at the site layout for your space, we would just want to know where it was located within the space. But people have done, heaters and some barbecuing options as well. Very interesting, unique, not super common, but they're out there.
Good to know. Okay. So people might be curious as to your background image. You want to talk a little bit about that project and how that came about?
Yeah, so in my pre-COVID existence, I was a coordinator for the Portland in the Streets program. That work was created out of PBOT's Livable Street Strategy, which was looking at community use of the right-of-way space. We had a fairly convoluted process for folks to get permits for communities to use right-of-way space. We were very separated. The programs were managed under different groups by different people, and you're going through 8 points of contact before you find the right person. So they kind of consolidated that community use permitting into the Portland in the Streets program. And we issue permits for things normally. They're all on hold right now, but for block parties, community events, the street cycling rides or running events. And then we do like the urban trails program. And then this one behind me is a Spaces to Places project. And so this is Southeast Portland, next to the Tucker Maxson School. And they created a educational garden space for their school to utilize, as well as some bocce ball courts and planted bollards. So they actually closed the segment of road to through traffic. Cyclists and walkers still go through there. They have a space designated for that, but they've really created a beautiful community space for folks to come out and enjoy. One of the fun things about this one, they have goats on the school property. So they have some benches here so you can sit and have a little goat viewing time. So it's very peaceful, enjoyable little space.
I love it. Yeah, I can't wait to go check it out. I feel like, more districts should be doing some of this. And actually, I think we had a couple at our most recent grant cycle. We had a couple of districts apply for similar types of projects. So they may be reaching out to you in the near future for some guidance there.
Yeah, and it looks like I blew through the benches question. PBOT does have some guidelines for benches, and we are trying to make sure that benches that are installed are ADA compliant. And so I can share some bench guidelines, Jacob, with you, and maybe you can send those out to the group so they can review those if they're interested in putting benches in place.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, the ones that I'm thinking of, people are just put out during business hours, just next to the business, like for people waiting for their food or whatever, and then they bring them in at night.
Gotcha.
So they're not a permanent structure.
Mm-hmm. So there's kind of an interesting thing also that I'll touch on. I'm thinking about like things in and out during the day. One of the things that has come up occasionally is outdoor commerce on the sidewalk. And so city code actually doesn't allow for sales on the sidewalk. So placing sales racks or items out there is not compliant with city code. We have allowed for that with the Healthy Businesses permits as part of the emergency response. And it's something that we'll probably review as we're looking at, what is the post-pandemic response for PBOT, or what does this permanent program look like? Or what other programs do we need to offer for commerce on the sidewalk situations? Because there are people who want to put out their sales rack and bring it in and out in the evening. So that's something that we are looking at. It's on our radar, but I just want to let you guys know that it's been in response to the emergency, and it's not something that was existing before this.
Well, it existed, but without. That's what last Thursday is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, thanks for clarifying that, Bridget. We got time for maybe just a couple more questions. So if you have one, punch it into the chat there. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Chris Hahn has a question. Given the fact that parking spaces are public space, is PBOT limiting hours of operations for these additional spaces? We've experienced a huge increase in noise from these locations. So in the guidelines for the permitting, is there anything around hours of operation or noise levels, anything like that?
So we just ask that people comply with like normal requirements through Multnomah County, and with the noise office as well. So people talking in the street is normal use noise. It doesn't require a noise variance permit. But if you're doing any amplified noise, like having speakers or music or anything like that, you would need that additional permit for the space. And then I think that most of the permitted spaces are not in residential dense spaces. So we haven't had too much of an issue because business districts are known as business districts. And so even if you have some units around there, there's an expected like people walking on the streets, activity in the streets kind of situation. I mean, if there's anything outside of that that's, you know, escalates to the level of needing, you know, to report it, then that's kind of an option depending on the situation. You know, whether that's police non-emergency or if it's a situation with healthy businesses permits, then that can go through our feedback form as well. And we will take a look at it and respond with whatever answer we are able to come up with. Whatever answer is appropriate for the situation.
Gotcha. Good to know. Yeah, the amplified noise permit, is that through PBOT or is that through BDS?
That I believe is through Civic Life.
Civic Life. Okay.
Yes, yeah, so we have a link to that on our website along with the fire marshal's office if anyone's interested in any fire related needs.
Okay, so any concerns around noise levels, Civic Life is the best person or best bureau rather to contact.
If it's amplified noise, yes. If it's just pedestrians out in the street, then that's kind of normal right-of-way activity. And if it's a concern about healthy businesses, then our feedback form is the best way to go.
Great, good to know. Thanks for clarifying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I think we've made it through all of our questions. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to just say any last words or share anything else that people should know.
I think we're just really excited about the program. We're very happy to be have approval from leadership to provide it free again this year, as we see that many businesses are still trying to get their feet under them, especially our BIPOC communities, which were hit incredibly hard by the pandemic. And so we're really happy about that and looking forward to that. And then I would just love to plug again that we'll have that survey coming out. So if you are engaging with the program, we absolutely want to hear your feedback and your experiences about healthy businesses. You know, we've had some businesses report that their revenue has gone way up, or that their customers feel safe and comfortable having outdoor space. And definitely the community has given us feedback that they like this. They like having the outdoor kind of European style dining or what have you. And so we're looking to the future and we want you to help shape that with that survey. So we'll have that on our radar. Again, it's really, really easy to apply through the website. And if you have any questions, please email us at the PBOT Business Toolkit at portlandoregon.gov. The team that is doing the permitting is incredible. We have over 400 permit applications in already. So it's kicking off 2021 in a very good place, but they're here for you. They're here to answer questions and they will be there to work with you through the permitting process and make sure that you know what's expected and that you know, safety and compliance is being met. But we're really excited to see these on the ground again this year.
Yeah, we're excited too. And yeah, just a reminder for everybody, those permits need to be renewed by the end of the month. So if you have an existing healthy business permit, please work with PBOT to renew that, get that up to date. And we look forward to spending some time outside with you all over the next couple of months as we go into the nice weather season here. So thanks everybody for being here. Thank you so much to my special guest, Bridget Coleman from PBOT. We're gonna follow up with some more resources and information, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either of us. And yeah, have a great rest of your St. Patrick's Day.
Thanks, everybody.